Hi, Sean and Alex. On behalf of Restoration Games, I want to tell you how excited we are to be sponsoring the Dukes of Dice podcast. This is something that's obviously been in the works for quite some time, and we know will last for years and years to come. In the words of the great Humphrey Bogart, I believe this is the start of a beautiful friendship.
Well, that's awkward. Whoopsies.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and probably not role-playing games. Today, the Dukes confront the reality of their mortal existence and recognize all things must eventually come to an end. Then the Dukes take a look back at this strange past week and what has led them to a fateful decision. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And you're joining us for, let me check the notes, episode 279.75, which we're calling Equitable Division of Assets and Debts, a concept that I'm very, very familiar with. Alex, how you doing, buddy?
It's been an interesting week. Hey, Sean, we got back to the weekly cadence. That's good, right?
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, good news for everybody. So we joked before, there are 7 people that heard like Restoration Games is a new sponsor, and the hope was they're like, oh, Justin, didn't want the show to end, so he reached out and he offered to sponsor the Dukes and just to keep it going for at least a little bit longer till they. So that's not it. Let's just, I don't want to. We're ending the podcast. This is not the last episode.
I was about to jump in and throw this out there because there's nothing in any of the earlier stuff that would say what the plans are. So right. Yeah, let's get that out of the way. This is not the final episode.
This is not the final episode. But we are sunsetting the Dukes of Dice podcast as you know it.
Yes. Is there a zombie version that I'm unaware of?
Well, no, but I mean, that's not to say that we're not, well, we'll talk about that. But the Dukes of Dice podcast, as you know it, as this bi-weekly podcast with a rigid structure of review games and recent plays and every now and then news that's usually late and then Duke's on Deck. That's gone. Or it will be gone.
And occasional complaints about things. Yeah, and thank you to everyone on the guild who reached out after episode 279.5, because there was a big outpouring of reaction support. If you haven't heard that episode, you'll hear some of kind of the setup, and this is sort of the punchline. But part of why we wanted to record a week later was we left that thing on a big cliffhanger. I threw some stuff at you wanted to process, and we didn't really talk over the course of the week until the night before we're recording this. So the Thursday after we recorded that last episode. And the thought process was, it makes no sense to leave folks on a cliffhanger if we come to some kind of an understanding or thought or whatever else. So do we want to start with the processing bit of this? Because we kind of broke down some of the reasons going into this, but I was coming at you with something and you hadn't really responded. So what happened for you during this past less than a week?
Sure. So one of the things that was unexpected and a little bit interesting was this identity of mine as Duke Sean. Like, I hadn't really thought about that or considered that. And I hadn't really thought about it in terms of how integral it has been in my personality or my identity, I guess, is probably the better term. But it's interesting because I go about work all day. I go to court. I talk to judges. I talk to other attorneys. And I'm not thinking of myself as Duke Sean in those moments. Certainly not. But it's certainly like there. It's this, I don't know. You've got like the ego and the id and the super ego and whatever, all of those. And I don't know. It's interesting. So there was a little bit of that. And I'm like, so am I killing Duke Sean if we end this podcast? Am I smothering Duke Sean with a pillow? Oh my goodness. What's the Seinfeld episode where George, and he's talking about it's like single George and relationship George, and if single George and relationship George combine, it's going to kill single George. A George divided against itself cannot stand. You know that episode? No?
Sean, it would not be the Dukes of Dice podcast if I didn't at least one more time let you down by not having seen something you referenced. And I've seen Seinfeld, to be clear, not that episode.
Yeah. It's when his fiance, Susan, tries to start hanging out with Elaine, and worlds are colliding, Jerry, is what he screamed. So that was part of the process. The other part of the processing was what does my weekly percentage of time that I spend thinking about the podcast and working on the podcast, how does that compare to what it was in the past? And I got to tell you, it's, minuscule now compared to what it was in the past. When we first started out, it was sort of the hustle of networking and, trying to reach out to publishers and get review copies. And, even just, interacting with our guild members, which is something I enjoy quite a bit, but it's just now as time has gone on, I just don't have the time or the energy to put into all of that. We just had Gen Con, and I think back to that, the one and only Gen Con I went to, that's like 4 years ago now. I had a ton of fun and, hung out with a bunch of other content creators and publishers, and it was awesome. It was an awesome experience. And I remember that the year after that, I was sad I couldn't go to Gen Con. And the year after that, I was a little less sad I couldn't go to Gen Con. And then I'm like, it is what it is, And so, like, I look at, our friends Marty and Tony from Rolling Dice and Taking Names, like they were at Gen Con and they were doing their thing, and it looked like a ton of fun. Blue Peg, Pink Peg, like those guys are just living it up over there, and good for them. Awesome. Totally awesome. And it's interesting to me that I no longer have the desire to do that. And I think that's very telling. I do think that's telling. I look at how I feel like I've muddled through a lot of reviews for the last 2 years, probably. And there's constantly, on a Dukes of Dice Wednesday night, hey, Sean, jump in this game that you love. Oh, wait, I can't. I have to review this for the podcast, or I have to get a new play or whatever. So there's that. There's the burden of editing the podcast. I don't know if anyone knows this, but for the first 4, maybe 6 years of the Dukes of Dice podcasts, there were a lot less ums in the podcast because I painstakingly edited most of them out. That's not the case anymore. I just don't do that. I can't do that. That took a lot of time. I wish I hadn't done that. So
we talked a lot about some of the triggers of and look, sometimes history only makes sense when you look back on it, when you've had something to look back on. And if I think about it, you taking over the law firm and then COVID, that combination of factors, less Ruby, honestly, less that, because even from the beginning of this, you were the driving force behind a lot of the growth.
Sure.
And I had jumped on and taken on some of that after my trip, after the getaway, and as things have kind of moved on, but never in the way that you sort of sunk your teeth into it. And that's how you approach things. That's how you approach your life. And it's beautiful in that way. And once that drive was gone a couple of years ago, there was a thought maybe it was temporary, and the desire to kind of have things continue in that vein didn't exist. And I think there's something to be said for maybe this could have ended a couple of years earlier.
Yeah, maybe it could have, but I don't know that it necessarily should have. Maybe a year from now, if we had continued, maybe we can go back and say that. What I will say is, yeah, taking over the law firm was incredible. Like, not so, we've got 2 children. One's an adult. One's going to be 21 in a little over a week. No, in a week. No, less than a week. Oh my God, less than a week. And then we've got an 8-year-old, and Raquel's a stay-at-home mom, and so obviously there's always been the pressure of I've got to provide for this family. That's a thing. But then when I took over the firm, it's also I now have this staff, and everything the staff does is to support me and support the other attorneys, but ultimately I'm the one, cranking out the billable hours that pays the salaries and keeps the lights on and pays the lease and all of that. So that's definitely a another concern. And a lot of the energies that went into the podcast went into the business. I mean, if you go to the Frazier and Ramirez Law YouTube channel, you could see some of the videos that I put together that have been used in marketing and have been used in, Facebook campaigns and all sorts of stuff. And it's interesting, a lot of that, not that they're amazing videos, not that they're expert in any way, shape, or form, but they're better than a lot of what you'll see other attorneys produce, unless they go out and they hire some sort of marketing firm that can, make videos and edit videos. And a lot of that came from, knowledge built from what I do here. So yeah, I do think that, if one or the other hadn't happened, COVID or taking over the law firm, I think things might have been a little bit different. And even though for the most part, and obviously COVID's not over, but there's a lot of ways that we're sort of back to quote unquote normal. But there's a lot of, and we're back to every Wednesday Dukes of Dice nights. I rarely would have missed a Dukes of Dice night in the past. Rarely. And now I'm kind of oh, well, unless I have to get something played, so I don't know. But yeah, it's an interesting mix of factors there. And so all that being said, I thought to myself, man, if I didn't have to, number one, coordinate with you on what feature review we're going to do, and then get the number of plays of it in that I need. Oh, and also make sure I get enough new plays. And then, take half my Saturday plus whatever the recording is to edit the podcast. I was yeah, I could probably do without some of that. So that's where I processed. That sums up my processing, Alex.
Okay. Sean, you mentioned identity as a concept, and this was something that didn't strike me until today. We had this conversation relative to the time of this recording the night before. This morning, I was thinking to myself, there's a big shift in identity that I'm unsure of going forward. That doesn't just go back 8 years for the podcast, but goes back, in my case, 19 years. Starting at age 14, I had a radio show in Santa Fe on KSFR, public radio. It was called the original Ground Zero radio. And that's when I started broadcasting. And in some form or fashion from that time on, I was either actively broadcasting something in that business or trying to be a broadcaster.
I did not even consider that. Wow.
Yeah. I didn't consider that, Sean, until it hit me and I was thinking of it. And the through thread has been, right, okay, you go to college, you're studying broadcasting, you're doing that there. You have the Student News Network. I go get a job in TV news. I work in that industry for 6 years. I've almost been out of that industry longer than I was in it, by the way. But even after that ended, the outlet, the broadcast space, this was it. This was the thing. This is the only thing kind of tying me to a version of myself that has been with me in some form or fashion since my early teenage years. So I have not fully reconciled that yet. And that whole identity piece is separate from what makes sense vis-a-vis the podcast and continuing on. And some of what we talked about last night, Sean, was kind of the slow decline of things And some of that due to COVID and changes in how Libsyn measured things and some of the other bits and pieces that went into it. But that's also been in my head. I will say this. I think it's unlikely I never broadcast the thing again. Like, unless, I mean, maybe I get hit by a truck tomorrow. You never know. Life's unpredictable. But I don't know if that's going to be... I know. Well, hey. I don't know if that's going to be Ruby's hockey games or that's going to be some form of board game content or some form of other content in the future. I don't know. But much like when I left TV News and when I left Gray Fox, I don't have a plan. There isn't a set thing I have that's going to step in and immediately replace it that I'm pivoting to. And it doesn't change the decision, but there is that element of uncertainty that's tough. Yeah, so anyway, that's part of how I processed. Obviously, Sean, some folks reached out on the Guild. Some folks reached out separately, privately. And some folks I reached out to. And it's led to a number of conversations. I'll highlight a few. One, we'll do something reflecting this in a second. But big thanks to Justin Jacobson, because I had this conversation last night with you, reached out via Twitter. He immediately responded, jumped in, and helped fulfill the prophecy. For folks who don't get the joke, and even when I mentioned some of this to Steven, the Namefather, and BJ, they didn't get the joke. I have said when Justin has named episodes, Justin Jacobson, owner, founder of Restoration Games, I have jokingly referred to them as the former future sponsor, that they would become a sponsor of the Dukes of Dice, but then decide it wasn't worth the investment. And so this is literally the only window we had to fulfill that prophecy to a T. So thank you to Justin. He turned around an audio clip. He turned around. We have actually gotten paid for this sponsorship. There will be an ad reflecting this later, but big thanks to Justin for making that come true. On the more serious side, I had conversations with two people, one of which you know about, Sean, one of which you don't. One of them was Chris Michaud of Flip the Table, also of not Mall Madness, but Mall Night Long, the amazing Zoom game show that we've enjoyed, and that you've bested me at repeatedly.
So good. I'm so good.
So, yeah, I know. But had a conversation with him. He had, again, the Flip the Table podcast. And I talked to someone on the complete other side of the dial. I had a conversation with Jake Bach, formerly of the Draft Mechanic podcast. I hadn't talked to Jake in at least a year. Good friend of the show. Longtime supporter. His voice, if you go back in the archives, I think it was episode 100, he provides some of the pre-roll audio and a pretty epic intro for that. Jake and Danielle,
which by the way, let me interrupt. Which will probably come back for next episode.
Ooh, okay.
We can't not use it. It's that good. Like, it
was amazing. I chills when I heard that.
Chills, absolute chills.
Yeah. But so Jake and Danielle had the Draft Mechanic podcast, kind of a blend of craft beer and board games, and they got so burned out on things that even today when I talked to Jake, he mentioned he mentally does not want to open up and learn a new game and a new rule book.
Wow. Yeah.
And they haven't done the show in close to 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, that lingering effects of the burnout of the crunch of that have weighed so heavily. So, had a great conversation with Jake. He's doing well. But they kind of came to a very sudden, unannounced halt. It just stopped. It pod faded. And Chris, on the other hand, had sort of an inciting event where things were going to end in a few months, and he had time to tidy it up, and they had a victory lap of a celebration. They sort of did it at the peak of their powers. They did it knowing what was coming ahead, and it sort of came to an end. We're doing sort of the middle route between the two here, which is we're coming to a relatively sudden end, but we are coming to an end. Sean, do you want to talk about, I guess, the final episode a little more after the break? I also want to, by the way, we're doing this totally out of order. Who cares? Recent plays, because I know you have a story from the past week that I enjoyed seeing online, and I have a story from the past week to talk about recent plays wise. So, ad time?
Ad time. Time for ads.
Well, Sean, much like the game The Dark Tower, once stopped being published, wasn't a thing anymore. Sometimes you just need something to bring something back to life, to restore it. And when you need that, you absolutely need restoration games. Sean, how do you feel about restoration games and restoring things in general?
So I'll say this, Raquel really enjoys restoring things, restoring furniture. You could say I've also been restoring my 20-year-old miniatures to make them current. But no, restoration games, we've had a relationship with them. This is the first time we've had sort of an official financial relationship with them, but we've had a relationship with them. Suze has been Duke Suzanne Sheldon. But anyway, let's talk about what's happening right now on BackerKit. You go to backerkit.com and you look up Return to Dark Tower, second printing, and there's also an expansion, the Covenant expansion. So if you missed out on the first Return to Dark Tower, you now have an opportunity to get it, but I got to tell you, you got to hurry. This is ending, 4 days from the time that we're recording. I'm going to release this pretty much immediately. So but get on it. Just get on it. It ends August 16th at 11:59 p.m. That's Pacific time. And so again, you got your opportunity to get Return to Dark Tower plus a shot at the expansion. But no, we've enjoyed a lot of their games over the years, quite a few. And I will say the Unmatched series is one of my favorite series of games. Something I've been able to play with Raquel, with Mariah, with Chewy. They're a fantastic company, and I have said that before they've ever quote unquote sponsored us, and I will continue to say that after their sponsorship ends. So, but definitely go check it out on BackerKit.com. Search up The Dark Tower. You won't be upset that you did.
Remember, if it's not a bestoration game, it's not a restoration game.
Terrible. Just terrible. Well, Alex, it appears that the Game Toppers 3.5 Kickstarter has come and gone, raising almost $300,000. Whew, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of cheese.
Now, Sean, you said it appears. Are you indicating that this is perhaps an illusion and there's a secret Kickstarter campaign going on at the same time while the main campaign appears to have ended? There's a parallel reality where the...
It's over.
It's over.
Okay,
sorry.
It's just done. It's done. It's done. And if you want to get, some of the stuff from the Kickstarter, I guess you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah, unless there was some sort of alternative reality where perhaps those who weren't on time, they weren't early either. They're not early. They're not on time. They've come to this. What's the word I'm looking for? They want to pledge.
If only you could have a tardy pledge. You can make a tardy pledge.
Yeah, a tardy play. Yeah, that's sort of what I'm looking for, but it's not quite. So it's again, you wanted to pledge early, but you didn't. You want to pledge on time, but you didn't. So there's a third state there. Well, anyway, that state I think is actually open. Oh, it's open. Oh, late pledges. Late pledges are open,
Oh,
Sean.
that's the word. Yeah, so if you want to get the new Mycroft or the new Moriarty, if you want to get leg kits, if you want to get some awesome new playmats, some with art by Vincent Dutrait, then you can go over to Kickstarter. You can look up the Game Toppers 3.5. There's this big blue late pledge button. If you're on a phone, you push it with your thumb. If you're on a computer, you click it with your mouse, unless it's your touch screen. And I guess you could, usually with a touch screen, you're not using a thumb, it's usually your index finger.
Use a thumb if you want to. I'm not judging. Yeah, look, I'm not judging what finger you want to use to press the button. Just, press the button.
Now, it does say late pledge starting June 2nd. That's come and gone for a limited time. So I would hurry. And I believe we're looking still at kind of a quick fulfillment here. So I would definitely do this sooner rather than later. These are very high quality table toppers. I play on them all the time. Alex, you've got one in your home. These are fantastic. Can't recommend them highly enough. So definitely go check it out on the Kickstarter or go check out GameToppersLLC.com.
Remember, if it's not a showstopper, it's not a game topper. All right, back to the show. Sean, before we talk about plans for the finale, plans, timing, all that fun stuff, I will tell you my story first because I think it's less interesting than yours.
Okay.
We have had sitting on our shelf of opportunity a little game called My City, which was, I don't remember if it was nominated for the Kennerspiel or the Spiel, but it was a nominee for one of those, I believe.
Yeah.
Reiner Knizia game, legacy game, very much patchwork but evolves over time. And I had gotten it with the intent that maybe Abby and I would review it for the show, and maybe that would be the case. And it had been sitting there for literally months. And Sean, we finally broke it out and started playing. And we played not one, not two, not 3 games of this. We have played the first 9 games.
Oh my goodness.
Of this campaign. It's I'm not going to spoil anything. It's bundled into 3 chapter sets. So the game evolves much like a legacy game does, but there are thematic ties in each of the chapters. And so they recommend you play 3 games at once in a sitting. So call it 3 full plays or call it 9 game plays. Abby is whooping me badly so far. She's won 6 games to my 3. So she is wrecking me. I would recommend this strongly if you like a game like Patchwork. It plays great at 2. Would play just fine with 3 or 4 as well, I think. Yeah. So My City has been on the table a whole bunch, which, by the way, no surprise, I'm not, like, my love of games is not dying here. I'm not kind of that other level of burned out. I'm still going to play a ton of games, and we'll, I guess, talk about other future plans in the future. But, Sean, I was heartened to see something that you posted on social media with you and Chewy.
Well, let me kind of circle around to that. So last weekend was interesting. And in a lot of ways, last weekend wouldn't have happened without our conversation. So Friday night, I went to Friday Night Magic for the first time in I don't know how long. At least a year, maybe more. In fact, I don't know that I've been to a Friday Night Magic since COVID. So yeah, I went to Tavern of Souls, one of the newer game shops here. And I just played some casual Commander. That's it. I didn't draft it and do, just casual Commander. That was a lot of fun. Skipping Saturday for now. And then Sunday, I got in a game at another game shop, Etten Games, a game of Warhammer 40,000. I brought my Necrons out and I played against a younger gentleman, which is weird. I mean, it's not weird, but it's just, he's like, I don't know, 25, 30, no, 25. Oh yeah, you're young too, but you don't see, but you're an old soul.
I'm not
Alex.
25 young, I was 25 when you met me.
Sure. Anyway, we played Necrons versus Necrons, had a good time. So it was just kind of interesting. In one weekend, I played Magic. In one weekend, I played Warhammer 40,000. And then Saturday, I said, "Hey, Choose, do you want to go to Empire to play some games?" I know she's wanted to try some adult games that we've talked about wanting to play. Memoir 44. I think she would really like Memoir 44. I'd rather have her play that first than Battlelore. I think she'll like Battlelore more, but Memoir 44 is a little bit simpler. So I wanted to see that. So we get there and we start talking about what she wants to play. She doesn't want to play Memoir. I say, "Hey, you've played Splendor. You really like Splendor. Here's Marvel Splendor. I've never played Marvel Splendor. I really want to play it. Let's give it a shot." "No, I don't want to play that." "Okay, how about Century Spice Road? I think you'll really enjoy Century Spice Road." "No, that looks boring." She does gravitate to what is it? Wasteland Express Delivery System something. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Like, that's not happening. Like, I would love it if you wanted to play that. I would really love to play that, but that's not what we're going to do. And so she says, "Well, how about Monopoly?" And I'm like, "Excuse me?" She goes, "Yeah, let's play Monopoly." I'm like, "Chewy, I've raised you better than that. Like, I'm not playing Monopoly. It's not a good game. You're going to get bored. You're not going to like it." No, I want to play Monopoly. We're going to play Monopoly." And I said, "All right. Are you sure?" "Yeah, let's play Monopoly." And I said, "Okay, if you're sure, but we're going to play till the end. We're finishing this game of Monopoly. What you start, we're going to finish." So we go down to the section of Empire that is the, non-hobby games. By the way, if you enjoy Monopoly, good. God love you. That's great. Good for you.
Hey, loyal listener of the podcast, Chris Michaud of Flip the Table, a big fan of Monopoly.
Here's what. Okay, let me address that here in a sec. So anyway, so we go down to the non-hobby section of games with your Sorries. By the way, I think I would still play Sorry, and I think I would enjoy the heck out of Sorry. I always enjoyed Sorry. I think Sorry is quite fun. I don't think it's good, but I think it's quite fun.
You would enjoy that game.
Oh, that's the meanest thing anyone's ever said to me. So here's a Star Wars Monopoly. Great. So this Star Wars Monopoly is basically base Monopoly, but with, Star Wars properties. There are some like, hey, if you want to Star Wars this up, you can do X, Y, and Z. We didn't do that. What I will probably say is this is the only time I've played Monopoly with the full and correct rules. So the two big rules that people miss out on growing up, whatever. One, the free parking. So people usually put like $500 in the middle of the board. Anytime you pay taxes or anything else like that, it goes to the middle of the board. And if you land on free parking, you get that money. That's not a rule. It's not a thing. It prolongs the game. The game is about like just bleeding everyone dry. And to just inject money like that is a terrible thing. The other thing that most people don't do is when somebody lands on a property, if they say, I can't afford it or I don't want to buy it, then you just move on to the next player's turn. But the rules say, no, it goes up for auction. And you start bidding on the property. So maybe if you're the original player who landed on it, maybe you're trying to get it for a cheaper amount. Maybe you see that this other person doesn't have enough cash on hand. So it's a $200 property. Maybe they've only got $50. If I bid 51, I'm going to get it unless they want to mortgage some of their properties, but they're not going to want to do that. That's actually kind of interesting. That's kind of an interesting aspect to the game. But I think those are the two big things, the two big rules that get missed that I'm certain in probably 50 games of Monopoly growing up, we never played with or played correctly at least. So we're playing. And I said, look, here's the key, Chewy. We just got to be quick. Let's be quick. Let's move. I did bring out poker chips from the back because I'm like, we're not playing with discussing paper money. That's just not happening. So she had fun with the tactile poker chips. And then we're playing the game and it's fine. I am envisioning myself in like a 3 or a 4 player game, really enjoying the auctioning. I think the auctioning is actually quite interesting and it's quite interesting decisions. I just landed on this property. It's worth $240. Do I want to pay face value or do I want to try and bid on it at a lower amount? Because I'm pretty sure this person's not going to mortgage these properties. And then maybe they start mortgaging the properties. Oops, I screwed that up. And then eventually we pay higher than the face value. Hey, guess what? That's a really interesting auction game. But then, as in most games of Monopoly, it goes too long. Because really what it comes down to is, are you going to skip over these, horrible sections of the board where your opponent has a monopoly and they've built houses and hotels? Or are you going to roll and just land on them? I mean, it's, if you can make 3 passes and like skip all of those horrible spaces, you're doing pretty good. But if you land on them 3 times in a row, well, that's probably game. And by the end, she was like, okay, can we stop? I said, Chewy, I'm your father. I have to teach you life lessons. This is an important life lesson. You should rely on what experienced people can tell you about a topic that they're knowledgeable about. I told you this was not going to be fun. I knew you were not going to enjoy it. I knew you were not going to want to finish. And I said, we're going to finish this game. And so boy. She was just at the end of the game, anytime I landed, because I was winning just by, luck, essentially. By the end of the game, anytime as I was winning, if I landed on one of her properties and I had to pay her something, she would be upset because she wanted the game to end. She wanted to get bankrupt herself. And then she would pass over my boardwalk and park place. I think it's like the Jedi Temple and the Imperial Senate are the Star Wars spaces. And she'd be so upset that she didn't land on them and get bankrupted. So we finished the game. I won. She was bankrupted. And I made her take a video saying how much she hated Monopoly and how I am always right, at least when it comes to board games. I mean, not like always right, but like, hey, let's, you're not going to like this game. Let's play a game that you're going to have fun with and enjoy. So that was probably the last time. That was the first time in at least, I want to say 25 years I've played Monopoly. Probably more, probably closer to 30. Probably.
It sounds like it's going to be another 25 based off of that.
I mean, at that point, yeah.
Ooh.
I'm not going to let my grandkids talk me into playing Monopoly. That's just not going to happen. By that point, I'll be too old. I'll be like, no, that's fine. So,
Sean, while you were imparting valuable life lessons to Chewy, today after I got Ruby home from daycare, she pooped herself so badly it was running up the back, like halfway up her back.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Up to her arm, like it was not a good scene. And the only way to clean that off, so we ran a bath, but we didn't want her to have all that extra stuff floating around in the bath. That's not a good way to be.
No.
So it involved me basically jumping in a shower with her fully clothed.
Sure.
Just to and she does not like showers. So this was not a fun time.
It's like needles just poking at her.
Yeah, she wasn't a fan. So while you were busy having your, you want to smoke a cigarette? You have to smoke the whole pack experience. That was my most recent parenting experience. So a little bit of a contrast there. I'll get there, 8 years from now.
Let me say this. I don't think so I thought about it that way, right? Like, you want to smoke a cigarette, here's the whole carton. It was more of what John Sheridan's father told him. I know you're a big Babylon 5 fan, Alex. No.
Nope. I will let you down twice in one episode.
No, I know. I would never expect you to watch Babylon 5. So John Sheridan's father, Captain Sheridan's father, his saying was, never start a fight, but always finish one. And that's how I thought of it. Chewy, you started a fight with me. You better believe I'm going to finish it.
Amazing. Okay, so that's recent plays. After the ad, weird. Let's talk final episode coming up. Timing, plans, and an invitation to contribute, because this show would not have lasted anywhere near as long as it did without the guild.
Yeah.
Straight up. Does not happen. And so, of course, we want guild participation, but not just in terms of naming the episode. And I don't know how you name an episode like this, but, folks can give it their best shot, I guess. Or are we just going to name it? I don't know. We haven't even discussed this.
I mean, I think we put it out there.
I think it has to.
And I think it's going to be kind of like your moderator, Chris's final round, where if you name this final episode, it counts for 1,000. 1,000 namings.
10,000. It's 10,000. 10,000 namings.
Well, 1,000 will do it, because
you are the name father for life.
Yes, you could usurp the name father. Steve O'Rourke was just this one. Ooh, I like it. I like it a lot.
This is a spicy game.
Yeah, so I feel like, after I don't remember quite what it was. The first year, maybe the first 2 years, as we were finding our footing, our feedings, because there's two of us. Our feedings. I think it's feetings.
Footings, I would say.
We decided to include a lot of guild input and participation, comments, reading them. I mean, you saw a little bit of that here and there on some other podcasts. And obviously, there's podcasts and there's YouTube channels with grab bags and, Q&As, things like that. But we really wanted to make a point of including our guild on, talking about the featured review, talking about the double take, things like that. And so I think we thought it was fitting that, if guild members want to record something short, we'll probably keep it to a limit, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, something like that. What we're going to do after this episode drops, we're going to post something in the guild. We'll cross-reference it probably on Facebook and Twitter and whatnot, but basically some sort of drive share where if you want to record something, throw it in there. We want to include it. I mean, we really do. Like, that's something that has kept us going, is all of the, the stupid inside jokes of the guild and naming these episodes and getting contributions about the various games that we're talking about. So we thought, what better way to kind of, send things off than to further include the guild even more.
Guild number 2008. If you have not jumped on there, this is now officially going to be the last opportunity.
Well,
so
I mean, it'll still be there.
I mean, I guess, yeah, we're not going to explode the guild. It doesn't cost anything to have a Board Game Geek guild, I guess. But yeah, and that may be a place for updates in the future, and who knows? We don't have. All we know is the podcast as we know it ends next episode, and beyond that, I mean, Flip the Table came back for an episode. Folks can come back for an episode. It's a thing. It's not a big deal. Just like the regular cadence, if you've come to expect that, that will not be a thing. So obviously there will be a Dropbox or Google Drive for audio recordings, but also just leave your thoughts. We kind of want to hear if this has meant something to you, what we've created these past 8 years. Would be great to hear from y'all. So, yeah. Other elements? Do we want to reveal other elements we're planning, Sean, or we want to kind of keep that?
Maybe just sort of generally speaking. I mean, we're reaching out to other content creators that have either guested on the show or whatever, that sort of thing. So we'll see what that holds. I am interested. We talked about it. We did every first episode, and then every year except for the last 2 or 3 years, we did top 10s, our top 10 games of all time. But it's been 2-3, I think, years since we've done that. I think it would be a fitting way to say, okay, here's where we started, here's where we wound up. We do have something else kind of tied into the first episode, but I think we leave that for a surprise.
Sure, though just knowing it's the first episode may spoil it, possibly.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, well, whatever. Anyway, yeah, I think that's okay. We can leave some elements of mystery. But look, the goal, especially knowing that this is going to be the last one, is not to get it done quickly, but to get it done properly. So it may be 2 weeks from now that we do this. That might be enough time. And it might be 3, and it might be a month. It will happen. We are going to put out a final episode. But the exact time of it, I don't know. Hard to predict. So,
yeah, I suspect it'll be closer to the 2-week time frame than the 4-week time frame. But yeah,
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to get this right. We're basically what would normally be releasing the following week. So what is that? The 22nd? What would have been released the 22nd would have been our 8-year anniversary episode, episode 280. Also, that's part of the issue too. We wanted to keep kind of like a nice round number as the final episode, hence the 279.5, 279.75. So
wait, Sean, what's
yes.
8 minus 2?
8 minus 2 is 6.
Oh no, we did it.
What? Jeez, terrible. Yeah. So, and like you said, so let me say this. I'm looking at our hosting, which is Libsyn. I'm looking at, for the foreseeable future, I think there's some sort of legacy hosting where if you're not putting up new stuff, you can continue to have the old episodes there. So that's going to stay up for the foreseeable future. Keep the website, and not that we update the website that often, but keep that there for the foreseeable future. Obviously the guild, hey, I'll pop into the guild every now and then. But I don't see this necessarily as the end of my content creation either. There's parts of me that would like to stream Magic. There's parts of me that would like to stream painting. Those are things that I've considered. Those are things that, at least with maybe streaming of painting, could lend itself well to Q&As or, hangouts of whatever. So, I mean, there is no way I'm done with content creation. My ego would not allow it. So,
Sean, I will say one other thing before we, and because I think we're about to wrap this up. I am grateful this is ending in this way. And what I mean by that is there have been many moments and opportunities where this could have ended in some kind of meltdown, anger. It could have ended in anger. And we're ending in the exact opposite of that place.
Sure.
And I am incredibly grateful for that it's sort of ending in a place I feel, I would say, I'm likely to be more emotional as we get closer to the recording of this. But at least in this moment, I feel at peace.
Sure.
This feels like the right next step for where we both are and for, possibly freeing us up to create cool new things in the future, separate, together, whatever that looks like. I am confident the friendship continues. After all, I still have a wedding to attend whenever that happens.
We were talking about just going to get a quickie wedding done.
Wow. Rude.
We thought, so there's a whole variety of reasons, but we would eventually have like a party. That was the thought. Hey, my buddy Mitch, he and his wife Jamie, you didn't meet Jamie. She was at the previous SeanCon. They got married, and then they got married. It was done. And then they were going to throw a party to celebrate. That party, I believe, was scheduled for March 25th, 2020.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So Ellie, Andy, and we all had tickets out to San Diego, and it was like right before lockdown, but we were all just like, yeah, we're gonna call this because we don't want to wind up stuck in San Diego in California for longer than. But anyway, yeah. So a party at some point. Party in the USA, okay. Alex.
I will say, Sean, if you can time this wedding over Thanksgiving,
sure.
I'm going to be in New Mexico over Thanksgiving, and I'm happy to officiate.
Oh, no, sorry, sir. You're not officiating.
Oh, I already knew I wasn't.
Well, no, so Andy and Ellie are gonna co-officiate.
Oh, geez.
Because I officiated both of their weddings. So they're gonna co-officiate.
Boy, that's going to be a fun mess.
Oh, yeah. Good stuff.
All right. Well, as good a place as any, I think, to sign off.
Yes,
thanks
indeed.
to everyone for all the well wishes and responses, and even the please don't goes and all that fun stuff. And sorry in that sense, I guess, because I know I am not a huge fan when something I enjoy goes away. But yeah, I don't know. This is weird.
I am a fan of when something I enjoy goes away and the timing's right. I like when things go out on. So for example, Arrested Development.
Yep.
3 really good initial seasons and then 2 really terrible ones. That's unfortunate. But Seinfeld went out on top, baby. So
yeah. Breaking Bad.
If anything, we're the Seinfeld of board game podcasts.
Oh no!
No, we're certainly not.
I don't think we're remotely successful enough to deserve that comparison. Man, this doesn't work in any way.
Nope, I know. It's a joke. Anyway,
oh, man.
That's going to do it for episode 279.75, Equitable Distribution of Assets and Debts. Until next time, the last time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on August 12, 2022. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks so much to our sponsor, Restoration Games. You can find for a very limited time Return to Dark Tower on BackerKit.com. Remember, if it's not the bestoration, it's not a restoration. The Dukes are also sponsored by Game Toppers LLC. Remember, if it's not a showstopper, it's not a game topper. We'll see you back here in 2-ish weeks. Until then, game on!